All right. Well, hello and welcome to the online gathering place. My name is Leah Petrucci, and I'll be your host tonight. I will be bringing you some hopefully fun and educational activities. Allow me to describe a little bit first before we go into tonight's topic, what the online gathering place is and what we provide. So, Online Gathering Place is a project where several of us have gotten together to provide an online space several times a week for people to come to get some mood boosting activities that will hopefully be fun and educational, that will reduce stress, that will maybe hopefully teach you something and reduce anxiety. And the ones that I like to do help you to teach you to calm your nervous system. And I do my live streams. There are several of us on this project that do live streams on different days. I do mine on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. on multiple different platforms, on YouTube. This is where I'm streaming from now, or Instagram or Facebook. All that information will be in the notes wherever you are, whichever platform you are tuning in on. So welcome to those who are live. I'm going to give a couple of minutes for people to kind of trickle in. And if you're watching the replay, hello and welcome. So tonight's activity is, I'm actually really excited about tonight's activity. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about in my counseling and coaching practices. And that is, it's called the laundry list. And the laundry list is a list of 14 items. It's a legitimate a list of items that reflect codependent behaviors that we learned in childhood that we tend to take with us into adulthood. And for those of you who don't know what codependency is, in a general sense, it refers to when we give too much of ourselves, sacrifice too much of our valuable time and energy for other people at a detriment to our self-care. And the roots go all the way back to childhood, how we learned how to do this, how we learned how to people please, how we learned some of these characteristics we're about to go over. So it's my hope that by sharing some information with y'all tonight, that it might shed some light on some behaviors that, you're like, oh yeah, I do that. Where does that come from? Oh, okay. And I'll give you a little bit more information. And I'm also going to talk about what it looks like on the flip side of that, what it looks like to have healthy behaviors, and some tips on how to change those behaviors. So that's my hope for tonight. If you are watching live, I would love to know where you're tuning in from. Please feel free at any time to comment in the chat, or if you have any questions during the live stream, feel free to put comments in the chat. I'm just going to check real quick, see if anybody has any comments. Okay. All right. So let's get started, because there's a lot of material tonight. So we're just going to dive right in. I'm going to take a sip before we get started of my hot beverage. Y'all know I love my hot beverage, that I love my Golden Girls mug. And tonight I'm drinking ginger turmeric tea. So grab a beverage if you'd like. And also, if you would like to grab a notebook and a pen or pencil if you want to take notes. You definitely don't have to, because you can always go back and rewatch this video at any time. But if you would like to kind of check, like do this as a checklist as we go across, and maybe make note of which items on the list that you relate to, and make a little headliner note that might help you to know where you might need to do some further work. So, all right, I'm going to take a sip and we're going to get going. All right. So, the laundry list, giving you a little bit of background in where this laundry list came from. So, there is a 12-step program. I'm sure most of you have heard of 12-step programs. Think Alcoholics Anonymous is the most popular 12-step program, AA. And there are multiple 12-step programs that have been born out of the 12 steps. And that's where this laundry list comes from, is not from Alcoholics Anonymous, but from another 12-step program that was born out of Alcoholics Anonymous called ACA. And actually, I'm going to put that up on the screen. So the laundry list came from a 12-step fellowship called ACA, which stands for Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Originally, it was called ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. People started going to the meetings and listening to the content and saying, well, hey, I relate to this content. However, I don't have parents that are alcoholics, but I can really relate to this material. So after the fellowship noticed these comments, they decided to make a change to the name and to call it Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Now, really, nobody comes from a perfect family. We all have our dysfunctions. We all go through shared trauma together. Even if there's no alcoholism, there's no addiction in your family, there could be other things. There could be codependency. There could be mental health issues. There could be all kinds of trauma. There could be personality issues. There could be all kinds of things. And so this is where this fellowship came from. It's a support group for people who are adults that when they were children struggled with family dynamics, issues in the family, or trauma as a child. And when I say trauma, that could include a lot of things. Think anything that caused harm to you. And that doesn't have to be only the big things. It could have been like, for example, being bullied. It could have been moving a lot. It could have been your parents getting divorced. It could have been having a parent who was sick, having a parent who had a mental health issue, or a sibling who had a mental health issue. Lots of things. And there's a lot of information on this fellowship if you would like to learn more information by going to the website, which is www.adultchildren.org. And I have the book, the textbook with me I wanted to show. This is literally called The Big Red Book, which is about the size of a Bible. It's quite big, as you see. It's textbook-like, but it is chock full of good information. You can't quite see the title. It's a little bit faded because I've had this for quite a while. Excellent book. So much good information. You could open it up and literally like read a paragraph and really get some good nuggets out of it. Lots of meetings that ACA offers, in person, online. Everyone, I think, can relate to some of the content that ACA puts out, and they're always putting out new meetings that are themed with all kinds of things. So check that out if you're interested in more information. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one piece of the ACA fellowship, one of the major pieces actually, which is the laundry list. And this is a list of 14 items of codependent characteristics that we learned in childhood and brought with us into adulthood. So we're going to go over that exact list. So as we go along, if you would like to kind of, like I said, grab a pen and a piece of paper and take notes and maybe jot down like which ones you relate to. And when we're done with that, I'm going to go over what's called the flip side of the laundry list, which is what it looks like flipped around, what it looks like the opposite. What do those healthy behaviors look like? So we're going to go over those two things. We're going to go over the laundry list and then the flip side of the laundry list. All right. And at any point during this presentation, if you have any comments, you have any questions, and you're watching live, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I will do my best to make sure that I see them. Actually, I think there's a setting that I can turn on to like make a sound with someone comments. But rather than me taking up time to find that, I'll make sure I do that for next time. So let's just dive in and go to the first one. Okay, and actually, I wanted to say before we get started, at any point, if any of these items cause any fluctuation in your nervous system, cause any kind of emotional reaction, just tap. just tap that collarbone point. Just kind of tap gently or do something somatic. Maybe rub your hands together. Maybe take a deep breath in. Maybe tap the karate chop point. Those of you who have watched my other live streams or seen my other videos on YouTube, you will know that I use what's called tapping a lot. In my practice and in my videos, it's a quick way to calm down the nervous system. These are different acupuncture points. This one is between the eyebrows. You could tap the side of the eye. You could tap underneath the eye. Collarbone is my favorite point. Side of the hand. You could pick any of those points and just gently tap. You could also gently rub the point and just take a breath in and out. If any of these trigger a reaction, trigger a response, and your nervous system goes, ugh, starts to creep up, then just simply just tap or touch and hold and breathe or rub or gently massage that point, and your nervous system should slowly start to come back down. Okay, so number 1 is we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Do you relate to this one? If so, jot it down on your piece of paper. Just put number 1, check. Do you isolate yourself? Are you afraid of people? Do people cause anxiety for you? Do authority figures cause anxiety for you? And this relates to possible things that might have happened in childhood, maybe having family members that argued, maybe watching parents that argued, maybe siblings that argued, maybe even authority figures like teachers or pastors that didn't behave appropriately. And you might kind of go, oh, well, that's why I don't really like to hang out in crowds or go to parties, things like that, have social anxiety. All right, going on to number 2. We became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Can you relate to this one? Are you an approval seeker? Are you a people pleaser to the point where you've lost your own identity? You maybe don't even know what you like. When someone asks you, what do you want to do? You're like, I don't know. Well, what do you want to do? Are you one of those that you just want to kind of people please and go with the flow and aren't able to speak up and say, well, I want to do this? And stick around to the second part of the video where we're going to talk about the flip side of these. All right, number 3, we are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. Do angry people frighten you? Do loud voices intimidate you? I definitely relate to this. I don't like it when people raise their voice or are talking over each other or interrupt each other. It's a trigger for me. I actually had sisters growing up, older sisters, that would yell at each other and sometimes beat each other up. And so I don't like loud sounds and people talking over each other. Do you also respond to personal criticism? Very sensitive to criticism. And this could also is deeply rooted back to childhood. Maybe you were criticized by a parent or an older sibling or a younger sibling, or another family member or a teacher or a pastor, something like that, a babysitter, any of those. And again, if this brings up any uncomfortable feelings, just do something somatic, rub your hands together, take a deep breath in, or just put your hands over your chest area, your collarbone area, take deep breaths in, and just allow your nervous system to come back down. All right. And number 4 is we either became alcoholics, marry them, or both. Or we find another compulsive personality, such as a workaholic, as a romantic partner, or maybe friends or friendships. And this could also, all of these are deeply rooted into childhood patterns. So it's possible that you may have grown up with someone like this, with an alcoholic or an addict of some kind, workaholic, codependent, a food addict, maybe someone who had some kind of dependency issue, or compulsive. Compulsive means they repeat this kind of the same unhealthy behavior over and over, almost addictively. All right. And number 5, we live life from the viewpoints of victims and are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. So in other words, we kind of take on that victim role or that victim mentality, and we may even be attracted to other people who portray that victim role. Just victim meaning like just can't help themselves, kind of helpless, hopeless, kind of pity, aren't able to engage, or maybe don't want to get the help, don't want to change. Do you relate to any part of this? And it doesn't have to be the entire thing. You might relate to some of it and not the rest. That's okay too. Okay, moving along to number 6. We have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. Do you find yourself feeling responsible for everyone else's problems and getting involved in everyone else's problems so you won't have to look at your own stuff? Do you give unsolicited advice? Do you tell people kind of what they should do without them asking for advice? And even further, do you get resentful when they don't take your advice? That definitely falls under this category, or feeling responsible for other people's decisions when we are just not. We're not responsible for other people's decisions and other people's choices. All right. Number 7. We get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves rather than giving in to others. Do you get guilt feelings when you say no, when you set a boundary, when you stand up for yourself? Does it feel kind of icky in your nervous system? And that's also a good time to just tap or do something somatic. Breathe in and out, rub hands together. Maybe even do the triple warmer smoothie, which is my favorite. Just kind of smooth the hair back. And hold. And then maybe cross the arms and slowly go down the forearms and out the hands. This is one of my favorites. It's an energy medicine technique based on Chinese medicine principles. Again, called the triple warmer smoothie. So if you need to do it again, if this one kind of stirred up any nervous system response, just do that one again. I like this one because it's like a self-hug. And then slowly go out your hands. Okay. All right, moving on to number 8. We became addicted to excitement. Do you find yourself constantly like needing a dopamine hit? Dopamine is a brain hormone where we get that sense of reward or pleasure or accomplishment. Are you chronically like impulsively looking for excitement? And maybe to the point where excitement, you got to see what's the gossip, what's the dirt, tell me what's going on. You need to know what's like the stuff going on in other people's lives. That's usually an indication that you have at that moment have low dopamine levels and you're seeking that dopamine hit. All right. Moving on to number 9. We confuse love and pity and tend to love, quote, people we can pity and rescue. This is a big one. Do you do you get in relationships with people that you feel like you need to rescue, you need to fix and rescue? This might mimic a situation from your childhood. You might have felt like you needed to save a parent or a sibling. And you're subconsciously, these are subconscious things that we do. We're not aware of them at the time. We're not aware that we do them. Only when we look at this list and we're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's me. Do we understand? Yeah, that's a pattern. And then do we seek help for that? Either with a therapist, a qualified coach, which I'll talk a little bit more about at the end of the video, opportunities where you can get this type of help, or also go to the 12-step program that I mentioned at the beginning, ACA. It's a great support group for all of these things, and everyone there can relate to these things on the laundry list. I've actually had clients before where I've given them the list and they were like, yeah, check, 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 check. Every one of these is me. What do I do? And we started to do the work. And of course, I did recommend ACA as a supplement to our therapeutic work. Okay. Number 10, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express emotion. Do you stuff your feelings? Quite literally, do you eat your feelings? Do you stuff them down with alcohol, let's say, drugs? Do you numb them? Do you try to numb your feelings because you lost the ability to feel or express them? Big one. Okay, number 11, we judge ourselves harshly and have low self-esteem. Are you your own worst critic? Is that inner dialogue, that negative self-talk? Do you beat yourself up a lot? I should have, the shoulds. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Oh gosh, I'm such an idiot. Like, do you find yourself saying those things? We sometimes can be our worst critics and have very low self-esteem. And this is, again, all of these are deeply rooted into childhood. You might have had someone, a family member or someone close to the family, who put you down, criticized you. And so you in turn judge yourself harshly. Okay, number 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment. This is a big one. I see this one a lot in my practice. Clients who are terrified of abandonment to the point, and I didn't put the rest of this one on here because it was quite long. Let me find it and read it to you. Okay, so it was number 12. Okay, so we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order not to experience painful abandonment feelings, which we received from living with emotionally unhealthy people who were never there emotionally for us or weren't there as much as we needed. So we might be terrified of abandonment. We might have felt abandoned growing up by someone. Therefore, we cling to our relationships. We have that codependent, maybe even that push-pull scenario, that dance, that codependent dance. Wait, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Wait. No, come back. That also speaks to what's called anxious attachment. And this is, definitely something that is deeply rooted in childhood. We fear abandonment. No one likes abandonment. Abandonment is not a comfortable feeling. But some people more than others really just cannot handle abandonment to the point that they will almost manufacture situations, exaggerate situations so that person will stay with them. speaking about extreme examples, maybe faking an incident. I have cancer, or I'm feeling like I'm going to harm myself, or I'm pregnant when they're not. Kind of concocting, manufacturing these situations to keep that person to stay with them. Those are examples of extreme dependent personalities, what we call dependent personalities, who are just terrified of abandonment. All right. All right. And number 13, we became para-alcoholics. This is the term from ACA because, again, the fellowship is called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Doesn't mean that if you didn't grow up in an alcoholic family that you can't relate to this. So we became para-alcoholics, quote, and took on the characteristics of that disease, even though we didn't pick up the drink. So this is referring to if you did grow up in an alcoholic family, that you became what's called a para-alcoholic, which is really another term for codependent. Because the term codependent originally came from addiction, the mental health speak. So the dependent was known as the addict, and then the codependent was the spouse. So the alcoholic and the para-alcoholic, or para-alcoholic is, again, someone who never picked up the drink, but kind of felt like they were still in the whims of addiction, just felt disconnected, from reality, and maybe even had compulsive behaviors and almost maybe acted similarly, but never picked up the drink. So that's what that means. There's a lot more information about that in the book, the ACA book, which you can get on Amazon, or you can get it on the adultchildren.org website. Highly recommend, even though I know it's like a pretty big read. Literally, you could open it anywhere and read any chapter and be like, oh, wow, that was some good nuggets. Okay, and then number 14, para-alcoholics are reactors rather than actors. So what this means is that you react impulsively, kind of emotionally without thinking, rather than acting, rather than thinking it through. You just kind of react. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this one, and but it again, it is deeply rooted in childhood stuff. But those are the 14 items of the laundry list. So I wonder which ones y'all related to. If you're watching live, I would love to know which ones you related to and which ones like really stood out to you. And if you're watching the replay, I would love it if you would put in the comments which ones you struggle with. And so now we're going to switch gears, and then we're going to go into the flip side of the laundry list. So we're going to talk about the opposite. What does the healthy behaviors look like on the other end of that? All right. Just checking in the comments real quick. Okay. Moving on to the flip side of the laundry list. So this is what the healthy behaviors look like. You ready? Okay. Number 1, and you'll see they're opposite of each one. So number 1, we move out of isolation and are not unrealistically afraid of others, even authority figures. So what I'm going to do real quick is I wish I could put both on the screen, but I don't think I can do that. So number 1 on the laundry list, the original one, just to remind you, is we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Flip side, we move out of isolation and are not unrealistically afraid of others, even authority figures. So you see, it's just the positive of the original laundry list item. So we are not isolated. We're socially connected. We're not unrealistically afraid of other people. We're not afraid of authority figures. That's what the flip side of the laundry list looks like. That's what health looks like. That's what emotional stability looks like. And again, we'll talk about how you can make these things happen when I'm done with this list. Okay, number 2, the flip side. We do not depend on others to tell us who we are. Wow. This is huge. We don't depend on other people to tell us who we are. We define who we are. We don't look to other outside of ourselves for our self-esteem. And actually, just to remind you what number 2 was on the original list, was we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Flip side, we do not depend on others to tell us who we are. That would be very nice, right? It is possible. Stay tuned. Okay, number 3, we are not automatically frightened by angry people and no longer regard personal criticism as a threat. How about this one? All right, so reminding you of the original number 3 on the original laundry list was, we are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. But the flip side of that is we're not automatically frightened by angry people and we no longer regard personal criticism as a threat. We can handle criticism. We can kind of say, well, thanks for that. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate that. Thank you for your thoughts. And we can choose to disagree, actually, with people's criticism. Did you know that? We don't have to take people's criticism. We can make our choices of how we're going to live our lives. All right, moving number 4. We do not have a compulsive need to recreate abandonment. I know this one is a tough one to take in. Let me try to explain. Let me go back to the original one. That actually will probably help. So the original one on the laundry list is, we either became alcoholics, married them, or both, or find another compulsive personality, such as a workaholic, or maybe a codependent, or a food addict, some kind of addictive behavior. And this comes from deeply rooted patterns if we were raised in a household with either a parent or a sibling, or maybe someone who was close to the family who had some kind of dependent personality, compulsive behaviors. Compulsive, again, meaning kind of doing the same unhealthy thing over and over. And so the opposite of that would be, and this, comes from having a family member that was these things, maybe one of these things. So that's what we knew. If we grew up with that, then that's what we knew. So we tend to subconsciously pick other people that remind us of that situation, because subconsciously we want to fix it this time. We want to recreate that abandonment, and we want it to work this time. This time it's going to be different because I have more control. This time I'm going to change this person. Or that's the thinking. It never actually works that way, but that's the thinking. So the opposite of that is, we do not have a compulsive need to recreate abandonment. We choose healthy people. We don't choose addicts. We don't choose dependent people. We don't choose, workaholics or compulsive people. We choose healthy people, and we don't recreate that abandonment scenario from childhood. That's a big one, y'all. That's a doozy. And that one definitely can take some work. Okay, number 5, we stop living life from the viewpoint of victims, and we're not attracted to that trait in others. So we're not victims. We don't attract other victims. We are attracted to healthy people who want to take care of themselves, are responsible for themselves, are self-sufficient, have good self-esteem, all those things. So just to go back and remind you of the original one, number 5 was, we live life from the viewpoint of victims and are attracted by or to that weakness in our love and friendship. And then the flip side of that is, Simply, we stop living life from the viewpoint of victims, and we're not attracted to that. We don't, it's not attractive anymore. We're not attracted to the victim mentality. You know, we're not attracted to the woe is me, the pity me, the poor me, another drink. You know, we're not attracted to that anymore. We know what it's like to pick healthy people. And again, that one takes some work as well, especially if we're used to picking, you know, those victim type people. Okay, number 6. We do not use enabling as a way to avoid looking at our own shortcomings. We don't enable. And just to remind you of the original one, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it's easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. We kind of get involved in other people's lives, so we don't have to look at our own stuff. We don't do that anymore when we're healthy, when we're on the flip side. What do? We don't enable. We look at our own shortcomings. We take care of what's on this side of the street rather than the other side of the street. We clean up our mess, and rather than getting involved in other people's. Okay, number 7. We do not feel guilty when we stand up for ourselves. Wow, that one's huge. That one is huge. And obviously, the original one is we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves rather than giving in to others. But when we are healthy, we are able to set boundaries. We're able to be assertive. We're able to say no, and we don't feel guilty about it. We don't do it in a nasty, aggressive, selfish way. Self-care is not selfish. You guys have heard me, some of you have heard me say this millions of times. Self-care is not selfish. It's essential. It's essential that we take care of ourselves. Setting boundaries falls under that. And we need to know how to say no when it's appropriate and not, you know, feel so guilty about it like we get sick over it. Takes some work, but it is possible. Okay, number 8, we avoid emotional intoxication and choose workable relationships instead of constant upset. Okay, I'll say that again. We avoid emotional intoxication. What does that mean? Well, kind of getting like drunk over drama, like where we look for the drama. And that comes from deeply rooted stuff growing up. Maybe we grew up in a household that was very chaotic, where there was, you know, constant upset, constant arguing. So that's all we know if that's the case. But when we're healthy, when we get healthy, we don't need that. We avoid emotional intoxication, and we choose people who are healthy and rather than that constant upset. Actually, let me go. Oh yeah, the original one was we became addicted to excitement, and it was what I just explained. Like if we grew up in a household that was chaotic, the brain just gets used to those dopamine and cortisol hits. Dopamine is the pleasure and reward part of the brain, where that excitement, and then the cortisol, which is our stress hormone, just constantly up and down, and constantly up and down in fight or flight. And so we might be used to that, and we might seek that out in our relationships. So, but when we're healthy, we don't do that. We avoid emotional intoxication and choose workable relationships. Yay. All right. Number 9, we are able to distinguish from love from pity, and we do not think that rescuing people we pity is an act of love. Okay, so we don't confuse love and pity in our healthy relationships. We pick people who can take care of themselves. We don't fix and rescue. We take care of our own stuff. We let our partners take care of their stuff. We might help support them. Sure, that is what a relationship is about, is support, but we don't take over. We don't care give unless unless that person really does need caregiving, they're sick or something of that nature. There are certain circumstances where it is okay to help support, where it is okay to be a caregiver, not a caretaker. There is a big difference. Being a caregiver is someone who has a legitimate reason for needing care. Maybe they have a chronic illness and they need support. But this is when being unhealthy is basically when we take over for doing for someone what they should be able to do for themselves on a daily basis. All right, number 10. We come out of denial about our traumatic childhoods and regain the ability to feel and express emotion. Okay, so we're no longer in denial about our traumatic childhood, things that might have happened in our childhood, and we regain the ability to feel and express emotion. The original one was that we stuffed our feelings down from our traumatic childhoods, and we lost the ability to feel or express emotion. We tried to numb ourselves. We tried to stuff our feelings with food, with alcohol, with drugs, with TV, with social media, with work, with other people, with relationships, with sex, with whatever it is. But instead, when we are healthy, we come out of all that denial and we regain the ability to feel and express our emotions in an assertive manner. And we deal with them as they come along. We process them in healthy ways. We let them out in healthy ways. We talk about them with a therapist, with a trusted friend, with a trusted family member, someone we feel safe with. We may let it out in healthy ways through exercise, through meditation, through grounding techniques, through tapping, whatever the case may be. All right. Number 11, we're almost done. We stop judging and condemning ourselves and discover a sense of self-worth. And while y'all are taking a look at that one, I'm going to go plug in my laptop because I just got the low battery signal. So stay tuned. This is what happens when it's live, y'all. Sorry about it. Okay. All right. So we stop judging and condemning ourselves and discover a sense of self-worth. So we're no longer like really harsh, criticize ourselves. So reminding you of the original one on the laundry list, we judge ourselves harshly and we have low self-esteem. Well, when we're in a healthy balance, we don't do that. We stop judging and condemning ourselves and we discover a healthy sense of self-worth, not in a narcissistic way, but in a healthy self-esteem way. There is a difference. All right. And number 12, this one's a little bit long. We grow in independence and are no longer terrified of abandonment. We have interdependent relationships with healthy people, not dependent relationships with emotionally unavailable people. Wow, huge, huge. We no longer are terrified of abandonment. We no longer stay in unhealthy situations for too long. We don't hold on to toxic relationships, hoping they'll change, trying to get them to change when they're just not going to or they don't care to. We don't waste any more time and energy on that. We say, okay, this isn't going to work for me. And we leave, we heal. Yes, we are upset, we are hurt, we grieve, but we inevitably get over it and we move on and we develop a healthy sense of self-esteem, a healthy relationship with ourselves in order for us to be able to attract emotionally available people. What do I mean by emotionally available? People who are going to be there and meet your emotional needs, who are going to validate you when you're upset, who are going to communicate with you, who are going to listen to you, who are going to talk it out with you. You know, not people who are going to criticize you or manipulate you or verbally abuse or any other type of abuse. None of that. We don't stay in relationships that are toxic just because we don't want to be alone. And this takes a lot of work, especially if there are abandonment issues. And remembering the original one on the original laundry list was we're dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment. And then the flip side is we no longer are terrified of abandonment, and we choose emotionally available people only. We choose people who are going to meet our needs and we can trust and feel safe with. Okay, 2 more. Number 13, the characteristics of alcoholism and para-alcoholism we have internalized, are identified, acknowledged, and removed. Let me say that again. The characteristics of alcoholism and para-alcoholism, when I talked earlier about para-alcoholism, that is when you never picked up the drink, you never were an alcoholic, but you kind of had maybe similar behaviors, emotionally, similar compulsive behaviors. Maybe you were other things. Maybe you turned to food. Maybe you turned to work. Maybe you were, just codependent in your relationships. So those characteristics, you've identified them, you've acknowledged them, and you've removed them. They no longer are there. That is the healthy side of number 13, which the original one again was we became para-alcoholics and took on the characteristics of that disease, even though we didn't pick up the drink. And again, this is language from the ACA Fellowship, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Again, it doesn't mean because you did not grow up in an alcoholic home that you can't relate to this. Every single person on the planet came from some kind of family, whether or not it was their family of origin or an adopted family or a foster family or something, came from some kind of family unit and came across some kind of dysfunction, because no one's perfect. Even very healthy parents who, there was no abuse, there still, of course, is room for mistakes. And there's trauma that happens within every family, meaning harm. Lots of things could happen within a family. Doesn't always have to mean abuse or addiction. It could mean other things. Lots more information if you want it, and I'll put that website up in a moment when we are done. We've got one more, which is the final one. On the flip side of the laundry list, we are actors, not reactors. And it was flipped around. The original one was we're reactors, not actors. Reacting, we react impulsively. We kind of maybe just, without thinking. We say things without thinking. We react. But in the flip side is we act. We think it through. We maybe say, you know what? I need some time to think on that. I'll get back with you. I need some time to process my thoughts on that. I'll get back with you. That's a really good go-to boundary. That's a really healthy statement to say. All right. And that is it, folks. So I wonder which ones you related to on the laundry list. And again, I'll put up the website if you'd like more information, if you'd like to see the laundry list. There's actually another laundry list. I didn't have time to go into that one tonight, but it's called the Other Laundry List. And that one is a whole different set of characteristics. Maybe I'll do that one on another night. Points to a very specific type of personality, but like I said, I just didn't have time to go into all of that tonight. So which ones do you resonate with? And here are some ways that you can get further help with that. So one is attend an ACA meeting, or just go to the website, adultchildren.org. There are in-person meetings. There might not be a lot of in-person meetings where you are, at least they're not where I live in the Bradenton, Sarasota area. There's only a few, but there are a ton of online meetings. There are literally meetings every hour on the hour. There are meetings late at night for people who struggle with evening time. And there are so many different themes. It's awesome. They have exercise meetings, they have book studies, they have open share, open discussion. They have meetings like about like educational, about trauma, educating you about trauma, educating you about the family system, all kinds of things for people who struggle with even other addictions, with alcohol, with food, codependency. It's just a great, well-rounded fellowship. And the other option, which I highly recommend, is to get a therapist or a coach, a therapist that is specialized in this work, in the work of codependency, or what's called adult children work, or even inner child work, which this fellowship really gets into what that is, the inner child work, or what's called the reparenting process, which refers to learning how to be your own loving parent. Even if we can't go back and get our parents to change and do what we would like them to do, we can always learn how to provide that for ourselves, learn how to be our own loving parent. And that's called the reparenting process. And that is one of the topics that is discussed in the fellowship in this 12-step program called ACA. Highly recommend. If you liked this material and you would like to work with me as a counselor, I am well versed in 12 steps. I am a 12-stepper myself. In fact, this is one of the fellowships that I am involved with. I've done many other fellowships in the past, but this is the one that I just really, really like and just get a lot out of for myself, for my clients. So if this is work that you would like to do further, if you looked at the list and you're like, yep, that's me, and you looked at the flip side and you're like, well, how do I do that? It's not something that I can tell you in one meeting. It is a process, because we didn't get that way overnight. These are deeply rooted childhood patterns. It is not something that I could say, here, come to this workshop, come to this free workshop, and I'll tell you how to fix decades of deeply rooted subconscious childhood patterns in like a 45 to an hour session. But it is something that I can help you with over time. And I absolutely would love to do that. If that is something that you are interested in, I'll give you some information on how you can get in touch with me. So if you'd like to talk further, if you would just like to schedule a free 30-minute consultation, you can go to my website at leahpetrucci.com. You can read a little bit more. There is some information on my website. I believe it's under trauma recovery. I do go into more detail on my website under the trauma recovery tab or the services tab about the ACA work that I offer, the codependent work, the adult child work, all of these things that we've talked about. So, and there is a link on my website to schedule a free 30-minute consultation. So I'd love to speak with you further. All right. And that is it, folks. So I really appreciate you coming this evening. I hope you will join us for a future live stream. I am here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do different activities. Next week, I think that I am doing music therapy. So if you're joining live or if you're seeing this in time, please join us next Wednesday, and we're going to do a little music therapy. So what does that mean? I'm going to pick a couple of songs. Hopefully I can get it to work and share, and so you can hear everything. I'm going to pick a couple of songs, and we're going to play them, and we're just kind of let out some emotion. Some of them are going to be like high energy, just kind of get out that, just shake it out or dance it out or whatever you want to do, because I can't see you. So this would be a great opportunity to just let it all out, let your hair down, get your groove on, and just let out some emotion. It's a great way to release stored trauma. So I hope you will join me next Wednesday night. And if you don't, you can always watch the replay. All right. So again, thanks so much for joining. This is the Online Gathering Place. My name is Leah Petrucci, and have a good night, everyone, and hope to see you again.